Hello, how's everyone doing? Right? So my name is Ivy, and this is my colleague Munise from York University. The paper we're presenting today is called A Dual Ethnography of Two EAP Practitioners' Journey of Increase into Multilingual Identity, AI, and Critical Pedagogy. So we'll start with the introduction, and then we'll briefly mention our rationale, research questions, methodology, data collection, and then we'll focus on the findings before we wrap up with implications and conclusion. Okay, so as EAP teachers, we were initially inspired by the diverse linguistic repertoire of our students. As you can see here, we not only considered integrating AI, but we also tried from the very beginning. So here's a snapshot of our own linguistic backgrounds. That's right, it's AI generated. So we created this comment book for the dual ethnography while we were still doing the master's program. Well, I admit it's a little bit adventurous, but it's quite innovative, right? Okay, so as I mentioned, we were inspired by the diverse linguistic repertoires of our students and also the advent of AI. For example, large language models that's used in language education. Admit it or not, AI is reshaping and will continue to reshape our pedagogical approach in the coming years. So consequently, its influence on our instructional pedagogy will continue to grow in the future. And here is the list of our research questions. So drawing on a dialogical inquiry, both of us served as co-learners and co-researchers, critically reflecting on how our diverse linguistic repertoire and cultural backgrounds inform and reshape our EAP instructional practice concerning the integration of AI. So the whole research was conducted remotely. During the process, we used several digital platforms. So we used iPhone recording and Zoom for our audio recording. And we used Otter AI for the transcript that was shared over Google document for editing later. After we finished polishing the paper, we created the comment book that I just showed you on Canva. So the whole process lasted for about 3 months. During this time, we collaborated ethically by continuously getting each other's consent and maintaining confidentiality. Now I'll turn the floor to my colleague Munise, who is going to share our findings with you in detail.
So based on our thematic analysis, we discovered these 3 themes. And the first one is our multilingual identities, both in personal and professional level. And the second one is obviously AI use in language education. And the last one was critical pedagogy and how it will direct our future directions. So that is the framework that we looked at. So starting off with the first one, multilingual identities. This was the first theme that came up since we asked each other questions on our personal learning journey, our linguistic and cultural background, our educational philosophy, and our students' backgrounds. So when it comes to our personal backgrounds, for Ivy, growing up speaking Hakka and Mandarin at home, and then learning English later, she has seen translanguaging as natural. And this has shaped her sensitivity to how students navigate multiple languages in the classrooms. For me, growing up in Turkey with Turkish,
speak louder and
yeah, sure. Growing up in Turkey with my Turkish as my mother tongue and learning English and German as additional languages, I found that some languages have more symbolic power than others. And that's why I become more aware of, equity and linguistic hierarchy in monolingual classroom settings. In practice, these activities, these identities have influenced our practices in the classroom as well. So we try to encourage translanguaging and code meshing whenever it's possible in classrooms, so that students can view and use their first languages as resources. For example, when I was teaching focus words in a pronunciation class, I asked students to share proverbs from their own culture, and they translated them to English and then explained the meaning. So this activity helped them to see the connections between their linguistic repertoires and English, as well as to create mutual respect and curiosity among their peers. We also build connections with students by appreciating their backgrounds as well. For example, my students worry a lot about their accents, especially in pronunciation class. So I try to give them the message that accents are a beautiful part of their identity and prove their multilingualism. So in class, we focus on improving intelligibility rather than fixing accents or having perfect pronunciation. So therefore, I think multilingualism is not a barrier, but more of a pedagogical asset in our classrooms.
Yeah, so I agree with Munise. I also adopt a translanguaging approach in my own classroom. While standardized English remains the primary learning objective, allowing students to draw on their full linguistic repertoires definitely helps reduce their anxiety, boost their confidence, and ultimately maximize the learning outcome. So next, our conversation revolves around AI in language education, including assistive AI and generative AI. So these are the questions that we asked each other. As educators, we both use AI tools responsibly to scaffold students' learning and to enhance our creativity and productivity. Sorry.
For example, I use Canva, which is a graphic design platform. And in the recent past, I created some AI-generated images and used them for 2 grad courses, including this comic book for one of our grad courses. It was very easy and fast, but not quite consistent all the time with the images. And another useful AI tool that I use is Grammarly, which is a language writing assistant tool. And I use the assistive AI version of it to check my grammar, spelling, and punctuation as a second language learner. However, we see these 3 main concerns about AI use in language learning. So the first one, as we all know, it's over-reliance. So students might stop developing their critical thinking or originality. And the second, that leads us to the second one, which is the authorship and authenticity issue. And in most of the cases, AI-generated texts actually do not have many proper citations, or they lack that genuine voice that the students or human beings can have. And the last one is biases and inaccuracies. So AI technologies usually reinforce white middle class English as standard and marginalize the other varieties. It can also generate inaccurate answers in some cases. So therefore, AI is a powerful partner, but only if it's used responsibly and purposefully. Now we will show you an example of an AI-generated image.
Okay, so this is the cover page that we created for our comic book. I have to admit, even for Chinese, it's very easy to overlook the mistake. So take myself, for example, I'm quite literate in Chinese, but I actually didn't notice that the stroke there was missing in the character. So the correct version is actually here. Without that one stroke, the word is completely wrong. It's like English spelling, right? So as language educators, we are responsible for checking the inaccuracies and biased information and raising awareness of our students of ethical AI use. Also, one more thing I want to share about AI with you is that there is a major divergence between us when we were doing the research. So while Munise believes that AI may create greater inequity in language education because of accessibility and affordability, I take the opposite view. I see AI as one of the most powerful resources available to bridge the gap. I know, like you might wonder, how is that so, right? So let me just give you a very simple example from my hometown. So it's a small remote city, actually it's a town in southern China, where the average annual income per person is approximately 4,700 converted to Canadian dollars. So is it really feasible for all the kids to have sufficient teacher resources? Apparently, the answer is no. So that's why I see AI as the best teacher available to them 24/7 at a relatively low cost. So are there any accessibility issues? Yeah. However, the issue is not because of AI per se. It's more about educational policy and support. So now I'm going to hand it over to Munise, who's going to talk about our last theme.
So this takes us to our last theme, which is critical pedagogy. And in near future, we see the potential and need in these several areas. So the first one is that institutions and educators should consider the digital equity and access issue that Ivy mentioned while navigating such technologies. So policies and initiatives should promote affordable internet devices and like training to reduce those barriers to participation in digital learning environments. Otherwise, only limited population will have access to these and will benefit from these while the others stay marginalized. And the second one is students should receive training on when and how to use AI ethically and how to practice their own agency. So educators can encourage learners to question the AI outputs, recognize its limitations and biases, and acknowledge its environmental effects as well. So this is the point that Jeff talked about earlier today, which takes us to critical digital agency and literacy. And the third one, educators and learners need to apply racial, linguistic, and social justice lenses. Teachers can use classroom discussions and critical reflections on how race, language, and power interact in speech and in AI technologies as well. So they don't accept everything that AI gives them. So there should be cross-disciplinary collaboration between linguists and AI developers or engineers. So this can help us that linguists can bring knowledge of cultural and linguistic context, while developers can implement these insights in algorithms. And last but not least, AI systems should consider human in the loop model, which means that the final decision in machine learning should be facilitated by human judgment and ethical standards. In other words, AI should exist within like ethical and equitable pedagogy in language learning classroom.
Okay, so for future directions, implications, multilingual identities should be seen as strength, not weaknesses. Although AI can boost learner agency and promote educational equity, it can also face challenges. So educators are responsible for guiding students onto the right track. By adopting a critical pedagogical approach, it provides a framework to reflect, to act ethically, and promote educational equity by empowering our students.
In conclusion, the ethnography can really transform how we grow as professionals. When Ivy and I reflected on our teaching and our experiences, we started to see our teaching in different ways. We actually got to question our old habits and discover new possibilities. And thanks to the ethnographic approach, we learned through dialogue and recognized how our identities influence the actual classroom practices. And when we bring together the identity, artificial intelligence, and pedagogy, especially critical pedagogy, we find both exciting innovation, but the real tension at the same time. But these intersections actually push us to think differently about what it means to teach in today's world, teach and learn in today's world. And in this digital age, we as educators need to consider reflexivity, student agency, and equity. So this means using technology responsibly, encouraging diverse voices, and creating student-centered spaces. So we believe real growth happens when we see AI and multilingualism not as challenges, but as partners in reimagining education. So that's the end of our presentation and
Thank you.
our references.